All right. I'm Brendan Allen Barrett. Today I'm joined by Tony Pucciarella and Will Paden. And we're talking about documentation for unmanned aviation operations and best practices for doing so. First of all, I want to introduce Tony. Tony is a retired U.S. Navy commander. Has served as a patrol plane mission commander, operational test pilot, VIP pilot, and aviation engineering duty officer. Before that, Tony got a degree from the Ohio State University and later received an MBA from Loyola University, Maryland. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brendan. Nice to see you again, Will. Thanks for inviting me. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Before we get too deep into anything, I want to give Will his introduction as well. But Tony, I mean, anything to add to that brief introduction, as far as what kind of context you're bringing to today's conversation?
Yeah, so I've spent pretty much a lifetime in aviation, and within that realm, kind of leveraging my aeronautical engineering degree and just my interest in engineering and in maintenance. Honestly, I've served in maintenance roles as well as operations roles in the Navy, and always gravitated towards the maintenance role. I've always been interested in why things break, how you keep them from breaking, and getting metrics for how to prevent that from happening again. So between the engineering degree and then spending a lot of time in aviation, and honestly, when you're in crewed aviation or manned aviation, you're making decisions that are life dependent, and in the maintenance role as well as in the pilot role. And I think that gets lost sometimes in the unmanned world because folks don't think in those terms. Nobody's on the aircraft, but there are people we're flying over. And there's also heavy or expensive equipment on the aircraft, and the aircraft are expensive. So we need to have the same type of diligence that we have, when we approach those type of issues. So that's kind of all these things in my life have kind of gravitated towards the software that we created back in 2016. And honestly, back then nobody would even listen to me. It was kind of like I was the crazy guy talking about things. And then over the last few years, we were kind of skating to where the puck was going to be, not where it is. And what's happened is the market's kind of met us, and now we're getting a lot more interest, and it's given us time to develop the product. So, but that's kind of how all my background kind of filtered into why we created, or why I created Alaris Pro.
Well, very cool. We're excited to talk to you today. Will, obviously don't want to upstage the El Presidente. So Will Paden, president of Soaring Eagle Technologies, a couple decades of manned aviation experience, as well as one of the founders, and again, president now of Soaring Eagle Technologies. Will, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Tony. Yeah, a couple of decades in aviation, like Tony said, you start to develop a thought process. Regardless of what kind of aircraft you're flying, you still have to do maintenance, right? As a maintenance test pilot for the U.S. Army on Blackhawks, and almost a decade actually turning wrenches and being a mechanic on Blackhawks, and on the civilian side as well. My background obviously gravitated and continues to gravitate towards a manned aviation mindset. And when I met Tony and them and the team, there was an obvious hole in the industry for this type of data collection and analyzation. And as I've told Tony numerous times, that it was needed. It was absolutely needed. We're one of the companies that's really pushing the boundaries on what can be done. The only way you take it to that next level is you have to do these type of things. You have to have the SOPs. You got to have the safety protocols in place. You got to have the training. But all of that, you still have to manage your fleet. And really, it wouldn't matter if it's aircraft or trucks or whatever. There's some sort of fleet management system out there, and just nobody had taken the time to truly figure out what is needed to manage the UAS fleets. And so we're super excited to be partners with Alaris Pro. We literally use it every day, uploading data. It helps us coordinate with our other partners, some of the OEMs out there, because they've also joined. And in 10 years from now, people are going to look back and go, well, that was the start of figuring out how to properly manage UAS fleets and really just continue to expand this technology.
Yeah. So Soaring Eagle Technologies, right? UAS service provider, a lot of mapping work, a lot of inspection work. Tony, for providers like that, or anybody who's conducting unmanned operations for, again, mapping use cases or inspection use cases, like what are some of the first things that folks start tracking or should be documenting?
Yeah. So there's the two primary areas that are most important that feed into the normal traditional fleet management is the aircraft and the pilots, or the crew. So with Alaris Pro, what we do is when Will puts his team in, or when his folks put their team in, we track not just their currency, when's the last time they've flown, and you can adjust that based on crew, organizational requirements. But we also put in, crew resource management, when they've had, model checkouts and all the things that go into, really making sure that that person is ready. You want to make sure the aircraft and the crew is ready, in addition to doing all the pre-flighting and everything else. But we track all of that. In fact, one of the new features that we have coming out here at the end of August is we're doing actually non-time based as well. So Will could say, this person's qualified to fly these aircraft, or in this group that we have, they can do BVLOS or they cannot. So you could have BVLOS pilots, or some type of segregation of skill sets that you could break out in the certifications, and it'll actually show you who's qualified to do what. So the crew is the big part of it, and then their hours and everything else that when you put them into the system, and then the aircraft. And the aircraft's a big piece of that. It gets a little more complex than the crew at times, because on the aircraft we want to know all the components that are on it by model, which high-tech servo or volt servo or whatever is on, or which model number, when it has to be replaced, and how many hours are on it, so we can tell you when it needs to be replaced. So we track that in very detailed fashion for the aircraft. But then also any inspections that are coming due, preventive maintenance inspections, or even custom inspections. In the military, we had, you had to inspect the aircraft every 72 hours or every 24 hours, depending on what you were doing. So you can put those in, and we allow that flexibility so that customers can put in, we have preventive maintenance inspections that the OEMs, put in their manuals, or if they don't, we have some recommendations that we put in. But then Will and team can put in their own inspections to say, hey, look, that's what the OEM does. They may do every 100 cycles, but I'm going to do an inspection every 50 cycles, or I'm going to do an inspection every 6 months instead of yearly, or 100 hours. And we track them by, calendar days, flight hours, or cycles, or any combination of those. It could be 100 cycles and 50 hours, but really understanding what's going on that aircraft and giving you reports as to where everything is on that aircraft, meaning in its life cycle. That's what we do, and that's probably the primary piece, is getting the aircraft put in properly, and then the crew as well. And then thirdly is we track batteries and payloads. So on the payloads, that's the big piece. And you're doing mapping, and you've got LiDARs. They're hundreds of thousands of dollars, and even a small business can end up having $500,000 plus or $1 million worth of LiDAR and other sensors in their stable. So what we do is you can add those payloads, and they can go on to certain aircraft. So when you select an aircraft, only those payloads that work with that aircraft will go on there. And then we start giving you metrics as to cost per flight hour, cost per sortie. We even do maintenance labor cost and things. It depends on how far you want to go with this. And but those are some of the big things, is putting in aircraft, pilots, and then payloads and batteries.
Okay. And I mean, all this makes sense as to why and the benefit of, but Will, I mean, for an operation like Soaring Eagle Technologies, you've got folks in the field mobilizing to different locations for different projects, different customers. What does it really take to get this stuff in the system, to have a clean data set that can, that can be used to that benefit? What are some of the things you need to consider in trying to collect and maintain that data?
Yeah, and to reiterate, the most important thing about collecting this data is the safety aspect, right? Everything we're doing is we're building around our safety case. If we're not collecting this data, we're not managing our fleet. And to manage our fleet, we have to teach our pilots how to properly upload data into the system, which is very easy, right? I mean, there's times that we're uploading data literally from the field by their phone. It's down to that level. It's that easy. And then we can also do bulk uploads. We can collect a lot of data, flights, and then do bulk uploads. But the important thing is, as the management team, we can then analyze. Tony hit on it. We can analyze what is it costing us to go fly that aircraft. Why is it costing so much? What is breaking? We can start planning for that, and we can figure out before we send a crew out in the field, oh, wait a minute, this type of aircraft, historically, somewhere around 100, 120 hours, I'm just going to make it up, there's motor issues. Well, if that aircraft is approaching that, well, maybe we don't send it on a 3-week project, on an inspection project, maybe we substitute it out, keep it back, if we can't get the maintenance done before the team has to leave. So little things like that, that's invaluable. That type of data, getting it into the system is simple as just literally uploading it, and then there's software on the back end just it sorts it, analyzes it, and it puts it in a situation where I can, or one of our operations managers can effectively manage the system.
So is that data that's then being collected in the field? Is that an additional step while somebody's out on site, or that's something that happens back at HQ home base, or is it a combination?
It's a combination. I mean, every situation is dynamic, right? We're flying LiDAR in areas that we don't even have cell service. At times we're doing inspections on power lines in the middle of the swamps. So it just depends. The great thing is, though, it can ingest that data and it can process it. Even if we have, let's say we're 3 days behind uploading data, it's so easy just to be able to upload it. System manages it. It does automatic alerts. Says, hey, you need to take a look at this, and it saves so much time for our management team. It makes us more effective. It makes us safer. And when we start looking at bigger and bigger projects, well, now we can truly tell our customers, hey, this is what our fleet does. It's not just I hate to say it, it's not just throwing something out there. We have reports. We can show you we can do a screen share and we can show you exactly what we're looking at. It's super important.
Okay. And well, I mean, from the safety aspect, I mean, what's one of those things that, if you've got a customer then who is, obviously call it a large utility, right? A large utility with, safety professionals, an aviation department who, they're used to business a certain way, manned aircraft, certain amount of training, a lot of the vendors that they might be talking to on a regular basis don't have that same type of standardization that crewed aircraft professionals, see as business as usual, right? So what are some of those things that you would, show to a utility, show to a large company with all these departments and all these stakeholders who want to make sure things are on the up and up, that would, I guess, put them at ease?
Yeah, absolutely. It goes down to the most simplest, the most basic form of maintenance. When are things breaking? When they do break, how do you document it? Who's doing the repairs? And what is your justification to put it back in the air? And that's manned aviation maintenance at its core. If you go into a hangar today somewhere and you find that manager that's over all the maintenance, they're going to be able to tell you the status of each aircraft. That's just, you would expect as an aviation professional, that's what I would expect. And so what we show our customers is exactly that. We can look at, whether it be a project here in Mississippi or a project in California, with just a couple of clicks of a button, we can show our customers how we manage that flow, how we ensure our aircraft are held to a standard. Because one of the biggest things that, and me and Tony have talked about this pretty in depth before, until the FAA mandates a lot of this, it's on companies like ours to ensure that we're pushing the industry forward in the right direction. Is it more expensive? Yes. Right? It's software. It's one more thing that we have to upload. And I say one more thing, tongue in cheek, but if if somebody's not pushing this, it's going to be too easy for the industry to not adopt the proper techniques, and the industry is not going to grow like it needs to. Because we have accidents, and then we're just talking about all the VLOS stuff. Now let's, if we want to jump into the safety case of beyond line of sight, well, at that point, you really do have, I mean, you have to manage your system, because you're launching that aircraft and it's potentially going 5, 10, 15 miles out. Well, you can't see it. You have to ensure that aircraft is maintained to the highest standard. It's literally no different than if I get to a helicopter and I have to fly, 300 or 400 nautical miles cross country. Same concepts. I got to look at weather. I got to make sure the aircraft's maintained to a certain standard. Because if something goes wrong, and let's face it, that's the safety case of UAS, is it's a lot smaller, it's a lot lighter, a lot less chance to cause damage, but there still is that chance. And if you're not using proper techniques, you increase that possibility. So our customers are very excited to see that somebody's actually taking a stance.
Yeah. Well, that makes me think, because at Soaring Eagle, right, you've got a lot of folks with manned aviation experience, right? And so that buy-in for documentation is pretty easy to come by. Tony, I mean, you're working with a lot of different organizations. I can think of, engineering firms, survey firms who are like, oh, cool, unmanned aircraft. They're not, they're seeing the business application of it, but they're not coming necessarily from a traditional or crewed aviation background. How can, somebody who's tasked a UAS manager, or again, department manager who's now incorporating UAS as part of their toolkit, how can they, I guess, try to achieve that buy-in for the documentation? What are some of the things that you're seeing out there as you're working with different types of organizations?
Yeah, what I've seen is when you've got groups like Soaring Eagle that are kind of front runners in the industry, that's a distinguisher for them. So when I'm assuming when you went after your BVLOS waiver, that you're using that data, and showing them and just having the confidence. We talk to a lot of folks in the regulatory environment, and they know what we're doing, and it makes sense because it's plug and play with what they're used to seeing in crewed aviation. But it really serves as a distinguisher. So, for Soaring Eagles and some of our other customers that are out there pushing the limits, it really kind of breaks you apart into a different category. And honestly, I think it makes, like Will was saying, when customers look at you, they see that you're different because you're doing things that others aren't. So for those that are just coming into this that don't necessarily have a background that Will has in a whole career in aviation, like he and I both did, is we view this, and I've viewed this since I started this years ago. After we went to AVSI, we've had a booth at Exponential every year since 2016 when we launched the software. And I'm not exaggerating. When the first year we were there, we couldn't pull people out of the aisle to talk about reliability, because they didn't see it as an issue. And then within 1 year from that, it just started ramping up when people started realizing what we were doing. But we've always viewed it as, since that day when I realized that this is a different industry, there's not a lot of Wills and Tonys and career aviators out there in the industry yet. I think they are coming, and I've seen a lot more enter the market or enter the industry. But I've viewed it ever since that time where I realized that the industry doesn't know what they need to know. I've viewed it as a way for me or as a role for me to educate them. So that's what we've been doing, and I don't mean that in a demeaning way. It's just trying to help them understand that we can help them, that this is data, again, skating to where the puck's going, not where it is today. We know that this is needed. We know that the FAA is not just going to relax all the standards and say, go, we trust you. They're going to have to see data. And so what we've done is we've put a lot of time into our customer success team with Angie, who leads our success team, to make sure that everybody gets the answers. We do a very formatted implementation process as we bring people into the system, and especially those that don't necessarily have an aviation background. So we don't get tired of the questions. I guess, Brennan, is to answer your question, is when somebody needs help, we jump to our help desk. We jump on things immediately, and we want to help them. And it's not just here's how you find the answer. It's let's walk you through and make sure you understand why we're doing it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And we get requests sometimes that we say no to. Somebody will say, well, this is what we want to do. One of the common ones used to be, and it's not anymore, was, hey, we want to have a few pilots flying the aircraft at the same time. I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense. That goes against what we're trying to do in unmanned aviation. We're trying to get the pilots, to be less of a role and have the systems do more of the work. So it's helping them understanding why we're doing these things. And when I talk to Will, it's a no-brainer. I mean, he gets it because we speak the same language. But what I'm trying to do is help the industry understand the language that Will and I have been speaking for a couple decades. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I guess I'm curious now, like in customer success, like what are some of those first hurdles or surprises that folks are coming across as they're onboarding to a system like Alaris Pro?
Yeah, so we've onboarded large customers. So we're in the process now of NOAA. We're actually releasing it on Tuesday. We won a 5-year contract with the National Oceanographic Administration, and we're releasing that notice on Tuesday. So we're going through that with large organizations. USDA Forest Service was one of the larger ones that we onboarded first. And it starts with us understanding what systems they have. And now, as we get more of these large customers, the delta between what we have in the system and what they're using is normally very small. But we have to understand and make sure that we have all those systems built out, because we build each system based on a configuration. So we have all the DJIs and everything else that's common COTS equipment in there. But then we've also got some of these custom ones or larger systems in there. So we wanted to make sure we get the systems right. And more importantly, after we get that, one of the most important things is to make sure that we understand their workflows and how they're structured. So we've got a tiered account system where an individual department has their own account, but yet all that data flows up into what we call a tier 2 account. That you can see how one division's data looks, and then you can combine all that data to see how your divisions look. So we need to understand how they're structured, and so that we can set up that account. The engineer team can set up the account appropriately. So, and from that point, it just becomes marching through the process that we have, for bringing them on board and making sure they're trained and that everything is set to go. And once they get through that process, which can be depending on how many people and how complex their operation is, it could be a week, it could be 3 weeks, it could be a couple of months. We go at their pace. But once they get through that process, it's on autopilot, for lack of a pun. But it just goes by itself. And we've made this pretty simple. We used to get folks that said, well, we want everything to be automated, like the DJI Go 4 app. We want everything to be automated like that. That comes with a huge cost, especially with that manufacturer. And what we've said is our customers are the ones that aren't going to complain about 8 seconds to enter some unique safety data that's going to get them unique reports back. And if it's somebody that really can't invest that 8 seconds, then it's per flight, which is not a huge investment, then they're probably not a fit. But even then, what we've done is we've created this small device that they can put on so that they don't have to input a lot of the data. We should have that in full release next year, but we've been working on this for a few years to make it even easier. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to lower the bar to the data that's needed to provide the right safety information. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is just make it easier to get to that bar, but we're not going to lower the bar.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're trying to pull insights from data, your insight is really only as strong as the data itself, right? Data stewardship is huge. You got to take the time to do it right. I would imagine, Will, in field operations like that of Soaring Eagle Technologies, like this becomes part of the checklist. Right. The guys are out in the field, they got their binder, they're doing their pre-flight checks. And I mean, capturing some of this data is probably happening at the beginning of the day, the end of the day. And then it also sounds like it's happening back at the office or wherever they're mobilizing from. I mean, how much adjustment has the Soaring Eagle team had to make to their standard operating procedures and their checklist? I mean, is it as simple as adding, a line here, a line there, or are we adding a lot more than 8 seconds to capture data?
No. It really is. It's as simple as Tony said. Again, though, Soaring Eagle has the mindset of manned aviation, and so it was a very seamless obviously some training involved, but a very seamless adaptation to using this software. Everybody within the organization, day one, we tell everybody, we are an aviation company, and our tool just happens to be unmanned technology. And so if you have that mindset, what's uploading a file, or when you're doing your risk assessment, dropping it in there, it makes your pilots feel better, because they know now that they're protected, because we're collecting the data, and they can say, no, actually I did a risk assessment. We talked about that. It goes back to the fundamentals of aviation. 100 something years ago, when man started flying, nobody thought about any of this. And over this last 100 years, there's been a lot of things written in blood.
Yeah.
So instead of rewriting those same chapters and books, having that data up front, whatever piece of data we're trying to collect, whether it's weather or maintenance on the aircraft, or when the last time somebody flew that aircraft, that type of aircraft, to make sure that they're still properly trained, they haven't forgotten how to go through that specific checklist. I mean, all of that's important. And when you're already doing checklists, when you're already doing those things, it's literally just one more step. And so I haven't gotten any negative feedback, and that's and Tony hit on something, is customer service. Phenomenal, right? Obviously it's a fairly new technology or software, even though it's been in development, but in the Army, we like to say, if you really want to break something, you give it to the private. They're going to figure out how to. It's true. Like, and so, as they've deployed it, and as we've used it, because we've been using it for a while now, we'll find something that doesn't work, or didn't, upload, or, hey, can we tweak this? And every single time we've sent in an email with our, questions and concerns, I mean, the team's just right on it. It's been an amazing partnership. All the people that have talked to me, I always talk about, partnerships is what's going to get us to the next level. There's no way Soaring Eagle can do it by themselves, right? We have to have super strong partnerships with the OEMs of the aircraft. We got to have partnerships like with Tony and his team. It takes a lot to bring this. I mean, because this is brand new technology, even though it's been around. Soaring Eagle's been flying drones since 2015. But it's still pretty much brand new technology. I mean, mainstream media is really just starting to pick it up. I mean, you're talking less than 10% of the utilities in the nation were flying drones on power lines 2 years ago. PG&E obviously pushed that, to the next level, and even the PG&E project just really highlighted the need for software like what Tony created. There's a lot of people out there that just didn't understand, and they're flying the aircraft all day, every day, and they started having crashes. Motor failures, battery failures, and it's just because most of them honestly just didn't know. I'm not throwing stones, casting stones at anybody. It's just, I was raised in aviation. Tony, he's been around aviation a long time. So what seems like a very common sense, second nature thing to us is not so for the vast majority of people out there.
Yeah. Well, it sounds to me like, as new as unmanned aviation truly is, right? There's a lot of lessons and wisdom that can be pulled from manned aviation, right? We've got over 100 years of experience, right? Organizations, whether they're service providers or asset owners, hiring service providers, like they don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? There's not much better design that's going to roll smooth, right? A lot of these things have been figured out, and you can avoid some pretty nasty scenarios and dangerous scenarios by leveraging the expertise and the wisdom that comes from folks who already have decades of experience behind them. I want to kind of wrap things up here. You guys have both been super generous with your time today, but as far as operations documentation goes for unmanned systems and best practices, I'll give you each kind of an opportunity here. Any final thoughts or things you want folks to walk away from today's conversation with, Tony?
I would say just kind of highlighting something you just brought up, which is you don't have to, in the military, we say you don't have to bleed, you don't have to bleed to know how to do it, and you don't want to have to relearn things. And so, one of the things that we did, and one of the things that I wanted to make sure we did was something. I've owned airplanes, personal airplanes, for most of my adult life, and been flying my whole life. And what I really didn't like is how there was this connection that was missing between other operators. Blogs and things, you can find some stuff out, but if a customer in Japan or one of our customers in Australia or anywhere else is having an issue with one of the aircraft that Will and his team has in their system, that they're using in their fleet. In manned aviation, you don't know about that. So when I was flying Gulf Dreams, unless I was on a blog or something that where somebody else would report that, I really had no way or nobody as a third party that was connecting me to other operators. And that's one of the things that I wanted to do in the software, and we've done. We call it the ACE, the Alaris Safety Ecosystem. So, and we've done that. We just had some saves a few months ago, or actually a month before last, where we had some issues, and we have another one that we're about to put out that we think will have a big impact based on some things that we're seeing. But we put them out just to the customers that affects. So if we see a component that's having problems, and we had a component that was failing well below its target cycle, target life cycle, and we put out a notice, and we actually had aircraft saved from that, and some of them were carrying LiDARs. So what's the value of that save? So that's kind of the cherry on top, is that not only are we doing all the safety reporting, we're doing something that's not even in manned aviation, which is we're connecting operators to the safety ecosystem so that Will doesn't have to experience the same issue that somebody else that he doesn't know that's flying the same aircraft somewhere else. So that's just kind of wanted to highlight that as we kind of close out. And I appreciate this. Will, it's always great to see you, and I appreciate the partnership. Absolutely. And Brendan, same, and appreciate all the time.
Well, thanks again, Tony. We appreciate your insight. Yes. Will, any final thoughts? Anything you want folks to walk away from today's conversation with?
Yeah, it just goes back to, we've said it a couple of times during this call, and I've said it countless times before. Like, if everybody's a good steward of their company and they truly want to grow this industry, they're going to look at solutions like what Tony and them put together, because the only way we survive as a industry is by people doing it the right way. Because at some point, if there's too many cowboys out there and they're just not doing proper management, proper maintenance, the industry is going to get a bad stigma and people are going to stop using it. So I would just encourage people, like, if you don't know, if you don't understand, reach out to somebody, reach out to Tony's team. I mean, reach out to, you can reach out to us. We'll share the importance of this, right? I talk about it all the time. Aviation safety, training, it's all 100% incorporated in UAS, regardless of your thought process, because we're operating in the national airspace. It doesn't matter how you want to slice it. We're operating in the national airspace, so those things are important. So I just, anybody that listens to this and has questions, just reach out to Tony's team. They're phenomenal when it comes to answering that stuff. Obviously, Tony, appreciate everything. Looking forward to, what's coming in the future. Hopefully we have a lot more conversations in the near future, because, might need to be plussing up our account there. Try to add some.
Those are great conversations.
That's right.
Indeed.
That's right. Thanks for putting this on.
Well, thanks again, guys. Thank you for everyone who's tuning in. If you have any questions, like Will said, reach out. Great place to reach out is in the comments wherever you're watching this. You can also visit the Soaring Eagle Technologies website, soaringeagle.com. Check out our newsroom for other videos and articles like this. And join our mailing list so that you don't miss any of the cool stuff that's coming out here in the future. Just scroll all the way down to the bottom of any page on our website. There's a nice little box there. Join our mailing list. We'd love to have you. And again, that mailing list is a great way to get connected, ask your questions as they come about. But again, I'm Brendan Allen Barrett, joined today by Will and Tony. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you all again real soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.